The Bay Area is a really competitive market, and first-time home buyers are already facing steep competition. Though many of them end up making really basic mistakes that they don't have to. In this video, we're going to talk about the top 9 first-time home buyer mistakes here in the Bay Area, and we're going to start right now. Hey guys, Hans Struzyna with the Gunderman Group at Keller Williams Luxury International coming to you with another video. This time I'm talking to all the first-time home buyers out there. As I said already, the Bay Area is very competitive and there's a lot of things that you guys can do to really up your chances to be successful in this market. If you get value out of this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Really helps me grow. Plus, you're going to not want to miss any of the content I'm putting out on a weekly basis. So keep staying tuned for all of that. And without any further ado, let's get into the top 9 mistakes. All right, mistake number 1. This is crucial. I tell everybody this from the very, very beginning. And it's to get underwritten up front. A lot of people think that they should start going shopping, looking on Zillow, going to open houses to get an idea of what it is they want. Well, I get it. I see where you're coming from. But if you really want to be successful in this market, what you need to do is know your numbers. And by that I mean get fully underwritten. Go talk to your lender, your mortgage broker, your bank, and see if they'll not only give you what's called a pre-approval letter, but fully underwrite you, which basically means get your entire file in front of an underwriter ahead of time so that you know with supreme confidence exactly what your budget is. Because frankly, if you don't know your budget and don't know your numbers, how are you going to shop for the house that you really want? Because that will obviously influence everything else. And when it comes to negotiating, you can both be strategic with the way you potentially remove a contingency, or at least it'll show a seller that you're financially capable of completing the transaction and make it much easier for them to accept your offer. All right, mistake number 2, assuming that you can get your 100% house. What do I mean by that? Well, of course, everybody's got a list. They've got all the things that they would love and they want and they need on a list of paper or in their head of all the attributes their ideal home has. Now, if you're a first-time home buyer and you're coming in at an entry-level price point, there are a few things you're going to have to be aware of. Number 1, the properties that you're going to be seeing by and large are older. Most of the time, that housing stock was probably built somewhere between 1910 and maybe 1940, 45, depending on what neighborhood you're in. And the thing to realize is those homes were built differently because people lived differently. So you might have a slightly outdated floor plan or an older kitchen or maybe just simply some finishes that need to be updated. The wonderful thing about buying a home like that is number 1, you've got an opportunity to make it your own. And number 2, it may be a little less competitive. So where am I going with this? Be willing to see beyond what is. The house that may not hit every single piece of criteria that you have up front has the possibility to. I've seen this time and again with clients who have the list and the things that they want. We can check those boxes potentially based on what it could be, not what it is. That puts you in a much more strategic advantage as opposed to if you want to buy something that's move-in ready with everything on your list, because frankly, a lot of people want what's on your list too. Mistake number 3, it's falling in love with the house. Now, what I said in the beginning is we're really competitive in this market. You know that, I know that. So until you get your offer accepted, the deposit is in, and all the contingencies are removed, and you have basically funded your loan, it's not really time to celebrate yet. Especially when you start shopping, you see something that you love at an open house or online, and then you find out that it goes way over asking or that it's got 25 offers or something crazy like that. It's really strategically important for your mindset to have a short memory. So use it as a tool, use it as a learning experience, but don't get caught up on it until the ink is dry. Number 4, using the listing agent to represent you. In the state of California, what's called dual agency is allowed. I've made another video about agency and I'll link to it right up here. But basically what that means is a lot of times you'll go into an open house, sometimes the listing agent or someone from their team or their office will be standing there and they may tell you that you have a better chance of getting the house with them than you do with whoever you're actually working with. Now, in the case of the listing agent, that's just not true because they have a contractual obligation to the seller to maximize that person's sale and that person's profit at the end of that sale. They're legally required to do that. So if you go write an offer with them, you are coming in second place most certainly to that original listing agreement and that relationship. Keep that in mind. Secondly, there's also a very opportunistic moment that happens there, and you have to ask yourself very clearly, is that the kind of person you want representing you on the most important and largest purchase you've ever made? Mistake number 5. This one trips people up because our pricing structure is really, really strange in the Bay Area. So assuming that the price you see on the listing is the price you'll pay, that's just not the case. We have a culture of underpricing in the East Bay, and depending on what neighborhood you're in, it could be as much as 50%. What do I mean by that? If a house could sell for something like $1.5 million, a lot of times, depending on the agent, depending on the neighborhood, they'll price it under $995, or excuse me, under that million mark at $995. Why do they do that? Number 1 is to attract people like yourself who are searching in those bracketed, 800 to a million range, so that their property will show up in your search criteria. You'll show up to the open house, you'll order a disclosure packet, and then they can count you as a statistic when they're talking both to their seller about how competitive it is, but then they're also pushing the top couple of offers that are actually going to be able to get to that price point, saying, hey, there's a lot of bottom pressure, you better come in with your best foot forward. Assuming you can time the market. Most people who bought at the right time or sold at the wrong time did so either out of dumb luck or because they absolutely had to, and it just so happened that it was the right or the wrong time later. So waiting until you think you see a down market or you think you see an opportunity is pretty risky, frankly. We tell that to sellers all the time, and same thing to buyers. What you need to decide on is what your goals are. You need to stay focused on what you're trying to get out of your home, what kind of timeline you're trying to be in it, and then how that is going to influence you down the road is up to you and your agent and the strategy you put together. But thinking that you can time it, it's probably not going to happen. Mistake number 7 is feeling rushed. We've had a really strong seller's market historically, and it does look like that is shifting a little bit right now. But nonetheless, there's still a bit of a pressure because there's lack of inventory relative to how many buyers are available. So people feel this sense of urgency, this sense of rush, and it forces them into doing something that they may not otherwise do, which is put in a bid that's way above their budget or way above their comfort zone, or remove a contingency, or frankly, buy because their parents told them to, or their friends said it was a good time, or they're thinking they're going to miss out on interest rates. At the end of the day, this is about you and your goals, not about trying to time the market, like I said earlier. So make sure that you're doing this for you on your timeline and not letting anybody else, an agent, a family member, whatever, push you in that direction, because that's ultimately going to lead to you being really dissatisfied and having huge buyer's remorse, and you don't want that on a home. Mistake number 8. Now this one trips people up all the time. It's not understanding the true cost of the transaction and then ownership after the fact. What am I talking about specifically? Well, in the transaction, you obviously have the purchase price of the home, but you're also going to have transfer taxes, you're going to have lender fees, you're going to potentially have points on your loan. So the price you write your offer at, you're actually going to have to bring in more ultimately to cover all of those expenses. And depending on what negotiation you do, those expenses may or may not fall on you. Generally speaking, there's more involved. Then, once you get the keys, there's a bunch of other things to be aware of, utilities being one. A lot of people are frankly surprised the first couple of water bills and the first couple of electricity bills they get because they come from an apartment 800 square feet into a 1,500 square foot house. It's bigger. It just takes more energy and more money to keep that thing going. Same thing with maintenance and repair costs. As much as you can, try and understand that up front. The gardening, the roof, any contractor work you're going to get. Try and budget that out ahead of time. And if you get really clear on this and very sober look on your expenses, you're going to move into that house and really enjoy it as opposed to be really pinching pennies and biting your nails. So make sure you just dig in on all the costs of home ownership, not just the price of the house. And lastly, mistake number 9, assuming that renting is throwing away money. What am I talking about? I'm a real estate agent. I get paid when people buy and sell property. So for me to say something like that seems a little off, right? Well, it is when you look at it through that lens. But when you look at it truly through the lens of trying to do the right thing for your client, it's basically piggybacking on everything else we just talked about. Feeling rushed, knowing your numbers, all of that. If you are only planning on being somewhere for like 2-3 years, it's probably not going to net out very positive for you to just buy that property, because you've got a lot of expenses when you buy, you've got a lot of holding expenses, you're paying mostly interest on your mortgage as opposed to paying the principal down, and then you've got transaction costs like commissions and other taxes when you go to sell. So it's going to take you several years to, unless you seriously appreciate, to net positive. Now, if you're planning on being somewhere for 8, 10, 15 years, you have kids that you want to have in a stable school district, this is truly the house that you want to grow into, or you see a way to add a ton of value in a short period of time so you can trade up to the next one, that's a different story. And that's why I say it piggybacks on know your numbers, know your goals, know your why, what you're trying to get out of this transaction. Because again, if all you're trying to do is avoid paying rent, well, make sure you run the numbers, because a mortgage payment right now in the Bay Area on a starter home is a lot higher in most cases than what you're going to be paying for an equivalent place in rent. And you have to decide how long you're going to be there and how it's going to serve you and your family before you actually make that decision to pull the trigger and buy. And that's it. That's my list of top 9 first-time home buyer mistakes. Hopefully you guys got value out of that. If you did, give the video a thumbs up. Drop a comment down below what you think I missed, what you think was a good point. I'd love to communicate with you on all those down in the comments section. And of course, please consider subscribing to the channel, because I am going to continue to bring weekly content like this to you, so you're not going to want to miss any of it. So without any further ado, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. This is Hans Struzyna with the Gunderman Group at Keller Williams Luxury International, signing off. See you on the next one.